The warm coffee hit my face like liquid fire. I felt it burning my cheek as it dripped down onto my lab coat. Rick Delaney stood behind his desk, his empty mug still in his hand, his face red with anger. "You will give Nixon Labs access to that patent, Aubrey, or I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I stood there, coffee still dripping from my chin, and looked him straight in the eyes. 6 years. 6 years I'd given this company everything I had. 6 years of loyalty, late nights, and brilliant ideas that made Nixon Labs millions. And this was how it ended. "No," I said quietly, wiping the coffee from my face with my sleeve. "I won't." His jaw dropped. He probably expected me to cry or beg for forgiveness. Instead, I grabbed my bag from the chair and headed for the door. I quit. As I walked out of his office, I could hear him shouting behind me. But I didn't look back. He had no idea what he'd just done. He'd just thrown away the most valuable thing Nixon Labs ever had. And soon, the whole world would know exactly what kind of man Rick Delaney really was. Let me back up and tell you how this all started. My name is Aubrey Lang, and I'm a medical device engineer. For 6 years, I'd been Nixon Labs' go-to person for impossible problems. While other engineers struggled with basic designs, I was creating devices that could save lives. I loved my job, really loved it. There's nothing like the feeling of building something that helps people. Every morning, I'd walk into that lab excited about what I might discover. Rick had hired me straight out of graduate school, and I thought he believed in me. But 3 months ago, everything changed. I'd been working on an idea that kept me awake at night. What if we could create a tiny device that could read DNA segments, find the broken parts, and fix them? Not just detect problems, but actually repair them at the cellular level. It was revolutionary, it was bold, it was exactly the kind of breakthrough that could change medicine forever. I spent weeks preparing my presentation, checking every detail, making sure the science was perfect. I was so excited to share it with Rick. I should have known better. The presentation was a disaster. I stood in Rick's office with my charts and diagrams, explaining how my DNA repair device could help millions of people. His eyes glazed over after the first 5 minutes. When I finished, he actually laughed. "Aubrey, this is comic book science," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "DNA repair? Tiny robots fixing genes? Come on, this isn't Star Trek." My heart sank. "Rick, the science is solid. I've run the calculations. The technology exists. We need to focus on real products," he interrupted. "Products that actually work, not science fiction fantasies that'll waste our time and money." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand, like I was a child who'd suggested something silly. I gathered my papers, my face burning with embarrassment and frustration. 6 years of proving myself, and he still saw me as just another dreamer. But as I walked back to my desk, something hardened inside me. Rick might not believe in my idea, but I did. And I was going to prove him wrong. That night, I went home and started planning. If Nixon Labs wouldn't support my project, I'd do it myself. I had advantages they didn't know about. As a senior engineer, I only worked 4 days a week, 8 hours each day. The rest of my time was mine. I cleared out my garage and turned it into a lab. I ordered equipment online, bought materials with my own money, and started building. Every evening after work, every weekend, every free moment I had went into this project. The beautiful thing about modern technology is that you don't need a billion-dollar lab to do amazing work. Most of the tools I needed were available to anyone with enough determination and credit cards. I used open-source software, 3D-printed custom parts, and even repurposed old electronics. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy, working in my garage until 2 in the morning. But I could feel it coming together. Each night, my little device got smarter, more precise, more powerful. I kept detailed records of everything: timestamps, receipts, video logs of my progress. I wasn't just building a device, I was building proof that this was entirely my work. 2 months into my secret project, something incredible happened. Helix Tech, one of our biggest competitors, announced a breakthrough DNA diagnostic device. The news exploded across social media. Everyone was calling it revolutionary, game-changing, the future of medicine. I watched their presentation online, and my heart raced. Their device could detect genetic problems, identify disease markers, even predict future health issues. It was impressive technology, and the market loved it. Their stock price doubled overnight. But I wasn't worried. Actually, I was excited, because their device could only detect problems. Mine could fix them. While Helix Tech's device was like a really good camera that could take pictures of broken DNA, mine was like a camera that could also edit the photos, remove the flaws, and save a perfect copy back to the cell. It was the difference between a doctor who could diagnose cancer and a doctor who could cure it. I worked even harder after that. Helix Tech had shown the world that DNA technology was ready for prime time. Now I just had to finish my device and show them what was really possible. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Rick's secretary told me he wanted to see me immediately. I knew exactly what this was about. Helix Tech's success had made him remember my ridiculous idea. I walked into his office to find him pacing behind his desk, practically bouncing with excitement. "Aubrey, I've been thinking about that DNA project you mentioned. Maybe there's something there after all." I kept my face neutral. "Really?" "Yes, with Helix Tech making waves, maybe we should explore similar technologies. Do you think you could develop something for us? Something that could compete with their device?" I smiled. "Actually, Rick, I already have." His eyes lit up. "Really? That's fantastic. When can you show me? When can we start manufacturing?" "You can't," I said simply. The excitement drained from his face. "What do you mean, I can't?" "I mean the device isn't Nixon Labs' property, it's mine. I built it on my own time, with my own resources, after you rejected the idea." His face started turning red. This was about to get very ugly. "That's impossible," Rick said, his voice getting louder. "You work for Nixon Labs. Anything you create belongs to us. It's in your contract." I pulled out my phone and showed him a folder full of documents. "Only if I create it using company time or resources. I have timestamps proving I built this entirely on my own time. I have receipts showing I bought all the materials myself. I even have video logs of me working in my garage." He stared at the phone screen, then at me, then back at the screen. This can't be legal." "It's completely legal. I also filed for a patent 3 weeks ago. It's already been approved." The silence in his office was deafening. I could practically see his brain trying to process what I'd just told him. Nixon Labs' most promising technology in years was sitting right in front of him, and he couldn't touch it. "Aubrey," he said slowly, "you need to assign that patent to Nixon Labs. We'll make it worth your while. A bonus, maybe a promotion." "No," I said. "You had your chance to support this project. You called it comic book science, remember?" That's when his face went from red to purple. "You listened to me very carefully," Rick said, standing up and leaning across his desk. "Nixon Labs has invested 6 years in your career. We trained you, we developed you, we made you who you are. You owe us that patent." I stayed calm. I'd expected this reaction. Nixon Labs hired me because I was already good at my job, and they've been paying me for 6 years of work. "We're even." "No, we're not even," he shouted. "You used knowledge you gained here. You used skills we taught you. That makes it our intellectual property. By that logic, every company would own everything their employees ever create for the rest of their lives," I replied. "That's not how it works." He grabbed his coffee mug from his desk. It was still steaming. He'd just filled it up. "You will transfer that patent to Nixon Labs, Aubrey." "I'm not asking. I'm telling you." I stood up and shouldered my bag. "And I'm telling you no. If you'll excuse me, I have work to do." That's when he lost it completely. He drew his arm back and hurled the coffee directly at my face. The coffee hit me like a slap of liquid fire. I gasped as it splashed across my cheek and dripped down my neck. For a moment, I just stood there, shocked. Rick Delaney, my boss of 6 years, had actually thrown coffee at me. "Now look what you made me do," he yelled. "This is what happens when you betray the company that made you." I wiped coffee from my eyes and looked at him. He was standing behind his desk, breathing hard, the empty mug still in his hand. He looked as surprised as I was by what he'd just done. "I quit," I said quietly. "You can't quit. You're fired." "Too late. I already quit." I turned and walked toward the door. "Aubrey, wait." His voice suddenly changed, becoming desperate. "Let's talk about this. Let's work something out. I'm sorry about the coffee. I lost my temper." I paused at the door and looked back at him. "You know what, Rick? Thank you. Thank you? Thank you for showing me exactly what kind of person you really are, and for doing it where the security cameras could see everything. His face went white. He'd forgotten about the cameras. I walked straight to my desk and started packing my things. The whole lab was staring at me, coffee stains on my shirt, my face still red from the heat. My friend Sarah rushed over. Aubrey, what happened? Are you okay? Rick threw coffee at me, I said, pulling my personal notebooks from my desk drawer. He what? Sarah's voice carried across the lab. Everyone stopped working and looked our way. He wanted me to give him a patent I created on my own time. When I refused, he threw coffee at my face. The lab erupted in shocked whispers. Everyone knew Rick could be difficult, but this was beyond anything they'd imagined. I kept packing, ignoring the stares and questions. My phone buzzed. A text from Rick. Please come back to my office. We need to talk. I deleted it and kept packing. Another text. I'm sorry about the coffee. Let's work this out like professionals. I took a screenshot of that one. It might be useful later. 20 minutes later, I carried my box of personal items toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Rick's voice echoing from his office, probably on the phone with legal or HR, trying to figure out how to contain this disaster. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in 6 years without having to go to Nixon Labs. It felt strange but also liberating. I made coffee, carefully, and sat down to plan my next moves. First, I called my lawyer. Janet Chen was smart, tough, and specialized in intellectual property law. I'd hired her when I first filed my patent just to be safe. They did what? Janet said when I told her about the coffee incident. Threw warm coffee at me when I refused to sign over my patent. Please tell me there were witnesses. Better than witnesses. Security cameras. Janet was quiet for a moment. Aubrey, this might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard an executive do. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? I touched my cheek where the coffee had hit. It was still a little red, but not seriously burned. I'm fine, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning. You're probably right. Companies don't like losing valuable employees, especially when they take valuable technology with them. Expect Nixon Labs to fight dirty. I was ready for a fight. I didn't have to wait long. The next day, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my house. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Nixon Labs' legal team. They claimed I had violated my employment contract by developing competing technology. They demanded I immediately transfer all intellectual property to the company and return any proprietary materials. I read the letter twice, then called Janet. They're fishing, she said after I read it to her. They're hoping you'll get scared and give in, but they don't have a legal leg to stand on if you really did create this on your own time. I did. I have proof. Good. I'll draft a response. In the meantime, don't communicate with them directly. Let everything go through me. That afternoon, my phone started ringing. Rick's number appeared on my screen every hour. I let every call go to voicemail. His messages went from angry to pleading to threatening, and back to pleading again. Aubrey, you're making a huge mistake, one message said. Nixon Labs made you. We can unmake you just as easily. I saved every voicemail. They were digging their own grave. While Nixon Labs was trying to intimidate me, I was getting ready to change the world. My device wasn't just a prototype anymore. It was a working miracle. I tested it on tissue samples, and the results were incredible. It could identify and repair genetic defects with 99.7% accuracy. I spent the day documenting everything, preparing for the patent defense that was surely coming. But I also started thinking about what came next. This technology was too important to sit in my garage forever. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor. Sarah from the lab stood on my doorstep, looking nervous. I hope you don't mind me coming by, she said. I got your address from HR before they locked down your file. Of course not. Come in. Sarah sat on my couch and shook her head. Aubrey, everyone's talking about what happened. Rick's been in meetings all day with legal and the board. He's telling people you stole company property. That's not true. I know it's not true. We all know it's not true. You've always been the most honest person in that lab. Sarah paused. But there's something else. Someone leaked the security footage. My heart skipped. What do you mean, leaked? Someone uploaded the video of Rick throwing coffee at you to the internet. It's going viral. I grabbed my laptop and searched for my name online. There it was, a video titled, "Boss Throws Coffee at Employee Who Won't Give Up Patent." It had already been viewed over 1,000,000 times. The video was crystal clear. You could see me standing calmly in Rick's office, then see him grab his coffee mug and hurl it at my face. You could even hear him yelling about betraying the company. The comments were brutal. "This is assault. She should press charges. What kind of psycho throws coffee at someone? Nixon Labs should fire this guy immediately. I hope she sues them for everything they're worth." My phone started buzzing with notifications. Friend requests, interview requests, messages of support from complete strangers. The story was spreading across social media like wildfire. Sarah was watching me scroll through the comments. "Are you okay with this being public?" I thought about it for a moment. Actually, yes, I think I am. Because now everyone could see exactly what kind of man Rick Delaney was, and what kind of company Nixon Labs really was. The next morning, my phone rang before 7 a.m. It was a reporter from TechCrunch. "Miss Lang, I'm calling about the video that's gone viral. Would you be willing to comment on what happened at Nixon Labs?" I'd never talked to a reporter before, but something told me this was important. "What would you like to know?" "Can you tell us about the patent that caused this confrontation?" I took a deep breath. I created a medical device that can repair damaged DNA at the cellular level. It could potentially cure genetic diseases that have never been treatable before. There was silence on the other end of the line. "You're saying you invented a cure for genetic diseases and your boss threw coffee at you when you wouldn't give it to him?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." The story ran that afternoon with the headline, "Engineer who invented DNA repair device assaulted by boss who demanded patent rights." It included the viral video, my interview, and a technical explanation of what my device could do. Within hours, my inbox was flooded with messages from investors, pharmaceutical companies, and medical researchers. Everyone wanted to know more about my invention. Nixon Labs went into full damage control mode. They released a statement claiming the video was taken out of context and that I had violated my employment agreement. They said my device was based on proprietary company research and demanded I stop making false claims about its capabilities. But their statement only made things worse. The internet had already decided who the villain was in this story. Every social media platform was flooded with posts supporting me and condemning Rick. Someone created a hashtag, Coffeegate. Within 24 hours, it was trending worldwide. A local news station picked up the story, then a national network, then international outlets. My face was on TV screens around the world, and Rick Delaney was becoming the most hated boss in America. My lawyer called me that evening. "Aubrey, I've never seen anything like this. Nixon Labs. Stock price has dropped 15% in 2 days. They're getting thousands of angry emails and calls. This is bigger than just a workplace dispute now." I was sitting in my garage lab looking at my device. Such a small thing to cause such a big storm. What happens next? They're going to escalate. Be ready for anything. Nixon Labs filed a lawsuit the next day. They claimed I had stolen trade secrets, violated my employment contract, and damaged their reputation with false statements. They demanded an injunction to stop me from discussing my device publicly and wanted damages for lost business. I read the lawsuit with a mixture of anger and amusement. They were accusing me of damaging their reputation? Rick throwing coffee at me had damaged their reputation. I was just the person it happened to. Janet was confident. They're desperate. This is what we call a slap suit. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to silence you with legal threats, but they don't have a real case. That afternoon, I got a call from an unexpected source, Dr. Maria Santos, head of genetic research at Echelon Biotech. I knew the name. They were one of the most respected companies in medical technology. "Miss Lang, I've been following your story. I wonder if we could meet to discuss your device." "You want to discuss my device?" "I want to discuss buying it. What you've created could save millions of lives. It shouldn't be stuck in legal battles when it could be helping patients." I agreed to meet her the next day. Echelon Biotech's offices were everything Nixon Labs wasn't. Bright, modern, filled with energy and purpose. Dr. Santos greeted me personally and gave me a tour of their facilities. "We believe in supporting innovation, not stealing it," she said as we walked through their research labs. When we saw what happened to you, our entire board was horrified. She led me to a conference room where 3 other executives were waiting. They'd done their homework. They knew exactly what my device could do and how revolutionary it was. "We'd like to make you an offer," Dr. Santos said. "We want to buy your patent and hire you to lead the development team that will bring this technology to market." They slid a folder across the table. I opened it and nearly fell out of my chair. $50 million for the patent, Dr. Santos explained, plus a guaranteed salary of $500,000 a year to oversee development, plus royalties on every device we sell. I stared at the numbers. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. "But," Dr. Santos continued, "we understand if you want to think about it. This is a big decision." I didn't need to think about it for long. That evening, I called Janet and told her about Echelon's offer. "Aubrey, this is incredible. But I think we can do better. Better than $50 million? Your device is going to be worth billions once it hits the market. You should get a bigger piece of that pie." Janet was right. Over the next week, we negotiated with Echelon. In the end, they agreed to pay me $150 million for the patent, plus royalties, plus the option to lead their new genetic therapy division. While we were negotiating, Nixon Labs was falling apart. 3 more engineers quit, citing Rick's toxic leadership. 2 major clients canceled their contracts. The board called an emergency meeting. Rick tried to contact me dozens of times, but I ignored every call. Finally, he sent an email through the company's official account. "Aubrey, I made a mistake. Please come back. We can work something out that benefits everyone." I forwarded the email to Janet with a note. Too little, too late. The coffee incident had cost Nixon Labs the most valuable technology they'd ever seen, and Rick was finally starting to understand what he'd done. The day I signed the contract with Echelon Biotech, one of the best days of my life. Not because of the money, although that was nice, but because I knew my device would actually reach the people who needed it. Dr. Santos held a press conference to announce the deal. She spoke about the potential of genetic therapy and how my device could revolutionize medicine. When reporters asked about the Nixon Labs controversy, she was diplomatic but clear. "Aubrey Lang is a brilliant scientist who deserves to be treated with respect. We're honored to work with her, and we believe this partnership will change the world." Meanwhile, Nixon Labs was in free fall. Their stock price had dropped by 40%. 3 board members had resigned. Major investors were demanding answers about how they'd lost such valuable technology. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard a familiar voice. "Aubrey? It's Tom Morrison." Tom was Nixon Labs' CEO, Rick's boss. I'd only met him a few times in 6 years. "Hello, Tom? I want to apologize for what happened. Rick's behavior was completely unacceptable. He's been terminated, effective immediately." I wasn't surprised. Rick had become a liability they couldn't afford. "I'm calling because we'd like to make you an offer," Tom continued. "We want you to come back to Nixon Labs as our new head of research and development. You can name your salary, your benefits, your team. We'll give you unlimited resources to develop whatever you want." I almost laughed. "Tom, I just sold my patent for $150 million. Why would I come back to work for the company that threw coffee at me?" "Because Nixon Labs is still your home. We made a mistake with Rick, but the rest of us respect what you've accomplished. We need you, Aubrey." I thought about all my former colleagues, the good people who were still trapped in Nixon Labs' toxic culture. "I'll consider a consulting arrangement. 2 hours a week, remote only. But I have conditions." "Name them." "First, Nixon Labs establishes an annual scholarship for women in biomedical engineering, $100,000 a year minimum. Second, you implement a zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment. And third, you publicly apologize for how I was treated." Tom was quiet for a long moment. "Deal. I'll have my lawyer draw up the contract." The public apology came 2 weeks later. Tom Morrison stood in front of cameras and microphones, with the Nixon Labs logo behind him. Nixon Labs deeply regrets the treatment of former employee Aubrey Lang. Ms. Lang was a valued member of our team who contributed significantly to our success. The behavior she experienced was completely unacceptable and does not represent our company's values. He announced Rick's termination, the new harassment policy, and the scholarship program. He also revealed that Nixon Labs had offered me a consulting position, which I had accepted on a limited basis. The apology made headlines around the world. Coffeegate had become a symbol of workplace harassment and corporate accountability. My story was being taught in business schools as an example of how not to treat employees. But the best part was what happened next. 3 days after the apology, I got an email from a young woman named Lisa Chen. She was a biomedical engineering student at UCLA, and she'd just been awarded the first Aubrey Lang Scholarship for Women in Science. Miss Lang, her email said, "Thank you for standing up for yourself and for all of us. Your courage inspired me to stay in engineering when I was thinking about quitting. I hope someday I can be as brave as you." That email meant more to me than all the money in the world. 6 months later, I was sitting on a beach in Costa Rica, working on my laptop. I'd decided to travel the world while consulting for Nixon Labs and helping Echelon develop my device. This was the life I'd always dreamed of, freedom to work on what I loved, when I loved it, from anywhere in the world. My phone buzzed with a video call from Dr. Santos. Her face appeared on my screen, and she was practically glowing with excitement. "Aubrey, you need to see this." She held up a tablet showing news footage from a children's hospital in Boston. The headline read, "First patient successfully treated with revolutionary DNA repair device." A 7-year-old girl named Emma had been born with a rare genetic condition that would have killed her before her 10th birthday. But my device had repaired the defective genes in her bone marrow. She was going to live a normal, healthy life. I watched Emma's parents crying tears of joy as they thanked the doctors. They had no idea who I was, but their daughter was alive because of a device I'd built in my garage. "There are going to be hundreds more cases like this," Dr. Santos said. "Thousands. Your invention is going to save so many lives." I wiped tears from my eyes as I sat on that beach. A year after the coffee incident, I was invited to give a keynote speech at the International Conference on Genetic Medicine. The auditorium was packed with the world's leading scientists, doctors, and researchers. I took the stage and looked out at the audience. A year ago, my boss threw coffee at me because I wouldn't give him control of a patent I'd created on my own time. Today, that same technology has saved dozens of lives and will soon save thousands more. The audience erupted in applause. I waited for it to die down before continuing. I'm not telling you this story for sympathy or revenge. I'm telling you because it illustrates something important about innovation. The best ideas don't always come from the biggest companies or the most expensive labs. Sometimes they come from someone working alone in their garage, driven by nothing but curiosity and determination. I talked about the importance of protecting intellectual property, standing up to workplace bullies, and never giving up on your dreams. When I finished, the standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. Afterward, a young researcher approached me. "Miss Lang, your story inspired me to leave my corporate job and start my own lab. I wanted to thank you for showing us that it's possible to fight back and win." That's when I knew the coffee incident had been worth it. Today, I'm writing this from my home office in New Zealand. It's been 2 years since Rick Delaney threw coffee at me, and my life has completely changed. My device is now being used in hospitals around the world. Hundreds of patients have been successfully treated, and clinical trials are expanding every month. Nixon Labs recovered from their crisis, but they're a different company now. Tom Morrison implemented real changes to their culture, and they've become a leader in ethical business practices. I still consult for them 2 hours a week, helping them develop new technologies that could complement my original device. Rick Delaney never found another job in the biotech industry. The video of him throwing coffee at me follows him everywhere. He's learned the hard way that actions have consequences. But I don't spend time thinking about Rick anymore. I'm too busy living the life I always wanted. I travel, I research, I help young scientists get started in their careers. Most importantly, I get to see sick children become healthy children because of something I created. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not giving Nixon Labs access to my patent. After all, I could have stayed in my comfortable job and avoided all the drama. But every time I see news of another life saved by my device, I remember why I fought so hard to keep control of my invention. It was never about the money or the fame. It was about making sure the technology reached the people who needed it most. That's worth a face full of coffee any day.